With the removal of jungle items in Season 11, jungle mains are actually a little sad right now. They lost access to one of the biggest power spikes and most gold efficient items in the game. However, with this downside does come an upside. We've got some insane champion item interactions that you can rush as your first item and abuse now that you're not locked into having to upgrade your jungle item. Over the past few days, the challengers here at Skillcapped have been grinding tirelessly to experiment and fill you all in with all the knowledge that they've gathered. Here are 5 of our favorite champions and their item builds that'll make them absolutely broken. Starting off, we've got Reysa, a champion that saw little to no play in Season 10, but with the introduction of new items, she's definitely going to be top tier. If you guessed that we'd be talking about Prowlers right now, you'd be correct. This item synergizes insanely well with Reysa's kit. Once she gets on top of someone, she absolutely destroys them. The only issue is, well, getting to them. Prowlers not only increases the damage dealt by your abilities and gets enemies lower for Reysa's execute, it gives you a point-click dash to your target that doesn't unburrow you. You heard that right. Gone are the days of being kited horribly by enemy champions. Before, you'd usually need to expend flash to get in range to knock up. Now you just have Prowlers on a short minute-long cooldown that warps you straight to your target, saving your flash and letting you use it to disengage from the fight instead. After Prowlers, items like Edge of Night, Black Cleaver, Sterak's, and Guardian's Angel can round out your build and give you some survivability to scale into teamfights. Reysa has always been a favorite when trying to carry low elo games due to her low barrier of execution and insane early pressure. With new items, she only gets better and her consistency goes up by a ton. Moving on, we've got one of the only junglers that can abuse new ADC itemization, Kindred. With the lack of a jungle item, a lot of champions are lacking that huge cheap power spike boost. Luckily, we've got Kraken Slayer to the rescue. What makes this item so great is not that it's just insanely synergistic with Kindred's kit, giving AD, attack speed, and crit, which she all scales insanely well with. You also get extra burst with the passive on your third auto. Stack this with Press the Attack and Kindred's E, and you've got a nasty amount of burst coming through on your third attack that all gets amped and makes enemies even lower for the execution damage. You might be thinking, well, that's not a cheap item. What do you mean it replaces Warrior? And you're correct, but the build path for Kraken Slayer includes an even better item in Noon Quiver. This gives 30 AD and 15% attack speed, as well as extra on-hit damage to camps, all for just 1300 gold. This feels extremely good as you get back that missing machete passive and have gold efficient stats for fighting enemy champions as well. Most other junglers won't have good components in their mythic items, and it's during this window that you'll be able to fight them extremely easily. After Kraken Slayer, we recommend going into Guinsoo's Rageblade and abusing the on-hit synergy. Even taking away Kindred's ability to crit, you still get pretty much exactly the same amount of damage as a crit build, with no RNG involved, meaning plays are a lot more guaranteed without having to rely on a crit to pull through. Your E damage will still be increased by your extra crit as well, so you get the best of both worlds. After this, round out your build with items like Runaan's, Black Cleaver, Bork, or whatever you need to survive. On hit with Runaan's feels incredibly good as you'll be dealing tons of AoE damage to the entire enemy team. Kindred absolutely destroys tanks with this build and can still dual squishies well, making it extremely good in almost every situation. Most of you probably expected someone to abuse the new lethality items, and we think Khazix is by far the best for them. Both Duskblade and Prowlers are looking to be extremely strong so far, as well as Omnivamp from the new jungle item being really good for Khazix, since his Q is single target and does a ton of damage. You actually have a lot of sustain in the jungle now. We think that switching between Prowlers and Duskblade will be good depending on the enemy team comp. Against single target threats that will kite and be hard to access, Prowlers can guarantee you to get on them without having to leap, as you can just R in, use Prowlers to one-shot, and leap out. You get a bit more damage to guarantee the kill and can also put a lot of pressure on tankier targets with damage amp. This item is literally AD DFG. If you remember the terrors of assassins in early seasons, well, it's back. Duskblade will be extremely good in long drawn-out teamfights, as you'll be able to potentially get 5 or more stealths off in a teamfight in combination with your R, resetting your passive each time and allowing for great navigation in fights from target to target. Weaving in and out of fights has never been better. We expect Duskblade to be the premier build in most cases since it also gives more ability haste than other builds, something that lethality users are going to struggle with. After your mythic item, you can build into more lethality items for insane amounts of damage, as well as some other items like Serilda's Grudge, which gives armor pen, CDR, AD, and a slow on your abilities. Items like Death Stance and Black Cleaver will be really strong against tankier teams if you need to kill front lines, and Khazix's versatility with item builds in the game will let you adapt to kill whoever becomes an issue. We expect nerfs to Khazix or some of his core items soon, so take advantage of it while you can, if it somehow manages to slip through ban phase. Up next is another champ that can abuse lethality extremely well, Kayn. On top of great items, Kayn now has one of the fastest clears in the game, since other champions were mostly hurt in terms of clear speed, while his remains about the same. For blue Kayn, Duskblade or Eclipse can both be extremely strong options, depending on what you think will help you survive in fights, stealth or a shield. After this, just build into more lethality like Youmuu's and Edge of Night like before. Unfortunately, the TM build we saw blue Kayn's go in Season 10 is definitely dead now, but you have access to lethality faster and have more items that allow you to build against the enemy, just like Khazix does. This is where things get really interesting though. Red Kayn gets access to Gore Drinker, an item on a short cooldown that gives AoE damage and a huge heal based on missing health. You're already going to be in the middle of the enemy team as Red Kayn anyways, so Gore Drinker lets you basically drain tank and heal massive amounts during fights, while creating space for your carries. It gives everything you want from a rush item: HP, AD, CDR, and great utility in early fights. You'll basically be unkillable as you complete more and more items like Black Cleaver, Death's Dance, Spirit Visage, and Sterex, and even better, you get more CDR for each completed item thanks to Gore Drinker's Mythic passive. Kayn was already obnoxious before, but now his healing has increased almost twofold thanks to more and more items adding healing effects onto them, and better access to CDR earlier, meaning you can spam abilities much earlier on into the game and eventually get more cooldown reduction than possible before. CDR also decreases the cooldown of Gore Drinker to spammable amounts, even getting as low as 7 seconds in some situations, basically the same cooldown as Kayn's W. Unfortunately, we tried some AP champions like Elise, Nidalee, Talia, and Echo, but without Runic Echoes to restore mana and give extra burst damage, they felt really bad, even when super fed. So we hope that Riot will do something to address the problem that a lot of them are having at the moment. Fortunately, there was one AP jungler that stood out, and they didn't really need any of those things in the first place: Lilia. As a champion that already rushed Liandry's early into the game after their jungle item for a huge spike, now you can just rush it sooner. Lilia loved the burn passive that would stack with her passive to wreck targets with dot damage. Now Liandry's gives mana as well, and CDR, and shreds MR. A lot of AP junglers are going to struggle with mana pool, but being able to rush Liandry's alleviates this problem and lets Lilia get to tanky items faster than before, making her even more annoying. Some might be tempted to go for a double burn build with Demonic Embrace right after Liandry's, but we actually recommend you to skip it and only pick it up later if you feel like you don't need a lot of armor or MR in teamfights. Lilia definitely needs durability and mobility, and this is where the Cosmic Drive comes in as your second item. Not only do you get a big chunk of AP, health, and 30 ability haste, you also get a passive that gives Lilia move speed, allowing her to weave in and out of fights even better than before, even without having to wait to stack up your passive. After these two items, you'll have 55 ability haste, which is absolutely amazing for early on in the game, and Lilia definitely needs this to be spamming Qs and Es to keep her move speed up. This is the fastest way to get this level of CDR this early on. After these two items, you can pretty much build whatever. Going into tanky items like Zhonya's, Randuin's, Deadman's, Spirit Visage, or Force of Nature are going to make you an absolute nuisance. But you can still itemize other things like Demonic Embrace, Morello's, Rylai's, or Banshees as you see fit. Just make sure that you're able to survive fights and then get more damage. Don't stay squishy. And that was that for our top 5 picks. While preseason ranking doesn't count for your OPGG or ranked rewards, it does directly influence where you'll start next season's placement. So it's still important to try and gain ranks during these couple of months. This will be a rather volatile time, but you can trust us to keep up to date with new builds and champions to abuse for LP. Let us know what your favorite build is so far, and we'll definitely send our challengers to check it out and give some feedback, potentially even in future videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.